When professional sports teams prepare for big games, they spend hours studying video of their opponent's previous games. Why? Because one of the best ways to defeat an opponent on the sports field is to know their game strategy in advance. And this is also true spiritually. If you would like to know the strategy your adversary, the devil, is going to use against you tomorrow, then listen in as Vicki Hitzges, Nathan Norman, and Kent Edwards reveal the strategy Satan used against Jesus. Welcome to CrossTalk, a Christian podcast whose goal is for us to encourage each other to not only increase our knowledge of the Bible, but to take the next step beyond information into transformation. Our goal is to bring the Bible to life, into all our lives. I'm Brian French. Today, Dr. Kent Edwards, Vicki Hitzges, and Nathan Norman continue their discussion through the book of Mark. If you have a Bible handy, turn to Mark chapter 1, verses 12 to 45, as we join their discussion.
Nathan, Vicki, have you ever had an enemy? I don't mean someone who just didn't like you, but someone who hated you so intensely that they would want to destroy you?
I don't think so. Have you, Nathan?
Well, putting it that way, that's pretty strong. There have been people who've wanted me to fail.
Sure.
There have been ones that have been out to ruin my ministry or try to disparage my name and ruin my reputation. But to outright destroy me, I think, no.
Well, and I think I could concur, but when I read the Bible, I discover that's not really true. You do have one. Don't take it personally. You were just kind of collateral damage. It's really you're suffering from the hate that began before time began. Oh, that's kind of vague. Nathan, help me understand. What am I trying to say there?
Well, if we can believe Brian in his introduction, we're talking about Satan. We're talking about the devil. He tried a failed rebellion against God. And as he took, according to the book of Revelation, a third of the angels to fight against God and to become God himself, it was a pretty sad rebellion. God just flicked him away like a bug, not even a bug. Just, that's in my way. I'll sweep you off the table, and you're worse than a crumb to me. And Satan fell. He fell hard. Thrown from heaven, thrown from grace. So he understands that he can't fight God directly. He's not strong enough. And as you have said before, Kent, and it's a great metaphor, is he took a play out of the old mob movie books. If you can't hurt the big boss, you go after the people he loves. You go after his family. And so Satan attacks Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. The people God created, the people that he loves, the people that are created in his own image. He can't hurt God directly, but he can hurt the people he loves. And so he entices them to sin and to believe that sin will improve their lives. And he was successful. Through his deception, through his temptation, sin ravaged the human race, and things were no longer the way they ought to be. Our relationship with God was damaged. Our relationship with each other was damaged. Sin just reigned throughout the human race from that point forward.
So I think it was Sylvester Stallone who once said that the essence of all stories is revenge. I don't know if that's true, but I will say that there is a strong theme of that in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
So as you've just said, Satan was embarrassed because his rebellion against God before the creation of the world failed. And he wanted revenge. And he got it by attacking the ones that God loves, the ones made in his own image. When you look at the devastation you've just described in the Garden of Eden, who seems to have won that contest?
Satan.
Yeah. He destroyed what God had beautifully made, ruptured the relationship between the people he loved and himself. Fast forward and you see the flood. God is so upset at the spread of sin that he destroys almost all of humanity. Who seems to have won?
Satan.
Satan again. Yeah.
Yeah. And then almost like he decides, I'll not worry about the rest of the world. I'm just going to concentrate on one covenant family, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Would you, we've gone through Genesis already. Would you describe that family as functional or dysfunctional?
Well, I wouldn't want my family to look like them if that's what you're asking.
No.
And then they got into Egypt, which is wonderful. It was a wonderful provision of God, but they got stuck there for 430 years. And they weren't princes of Egypt. What were they?
Slaves.
Yeah, who seems to be winning?
Satan.
Satan. And they get right to the edge of the Jordan River, and they're all set. Moses has led them there after 10 miracles, and they're ready to move into the promised land. Do they go? No.
Nope. The people are too big and scary.
And the whole generation ends. I mean, this goes on, this pattern of defeat and defeat and defeat, until finally the northern kingdom, 10 of the 12 tribes, they're lost. They are destroyed because of their sin. And the 2 southern tribes that are left, they go to Babylon. And yeah, they come back. Thank you, Nehemiah. But Jerusalem is not a shadow of what it used to be. Who seems to be winning?
Satan.
Mm-hmm.
Noticing a pattern here.
Notice that there are 400 silent years where God does not communicate. If a couple in your church said they hadn't talked for 2 months, would you guys be concerned?
Yeah, their marriage is pretty much over.
And after 400 years, what do you think people were thinking?
Yeah, it's over.
It's over. Our relationship with God is done. I think he's given up on me. Satan has been 100% effective in infecting every single person with sin. It looks like he is defeating God's plan for the world. And then one is born, a second Adam, because of a virgin birth. Jesus comes, and for the first time since Adam, there is a sinless human being. And I think Satan knew he had a problem. In Mark chapter 1, in verse 9, what do we read, Vicki?
It says, at that time, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee. Isn't it interesting that he didn't come from some big, huge, flaming city, but Nazareth, and was baptized by John in the Jordan. Just as Jesus was coming up out of the water, he saw heaven being torn open. I love that word picture. Torn open, and the Spirit descending on him like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased."
So God the Father yells from heaven, "This is my Son." Who do you think he was speaking to?
Jesus.
The people who were there. And Jesus, yep. But who else? I think he was speaking to Satan. I think he's saying, come on, all these centuries you've been beating up on my children. Come on, let's go at it. Man on man. You can beat up kids, but can you take me on? This is the first time in the creation of the world that you see God and Satan together. And what does he do? We read in verse 12, at once the Spirit sent him out to the desert, and he was in the desert 40 days. And what was Satan doing?
Tempting him. Wouldn't you know?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you know it? Like put your dukes up. You think this is over now?
He's a one-hit wonder.
He's a one-hit wonder. Because why did he meet Jesus to tempt him? What would he have succeeded in doing if he was successful in his temptations?
He's better than God. He's more powerful than God.
And?
Sin would never be able to be forgiven if Jesus had fallen.
Absolutely.
So if Jesus had sinned, that means that Satan would have won, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's no way we could have forgiveness of sin. No way that relationship that had begun in the Garden of Eden could have been restored. And he goes out because his number one strategy to defeat the ministry of Satan and ours is to get us to sin. Can you think of the number of people that Satan has successfully destroyed because whose ministry has been destroyed because of sin?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, just buy a copy of Christianity Today.
I know.
It's there's entire news organizations now devoted to following pastors or ministry leaders who have fallen and have absolutely sinned.
And then just closer to home, John Q. Public, anytime you have a couple that says I do, and then it turns into I don't or I won't, that's a victory for Satan.
Absolutely.
Any time we don't do what God wants or what God says, as my dad used to tell me when I was a kid, he's not out to kill your fun, Vicki. He loves you. And when we don't obey, it hurts God, but it's because it hurts us.
Yeah.
That's right. So his number one strategy is to get us to sin, and he's won a victory. Is he successful?
Against Jesus, no. Against us, every time.
Well, hopefully not every time.
Well, not every time,
Yeah,
but
don't speak
in
for
the
yourself.
totality of humanity, he's at least had one win in everyone's life.
So here's Satan. He tries to get Jesus to sin. He's been successful in doing that with every single person, fails with Jesus. And then the text tells us Jesus goes out and starts pulling his team together. He pulls together his disciples, Peter, Andrew, James, and John. And you and I are familiar with those names. This is a dream team he's putting together. And I can only feel Satan's anxiety increasing. And then we read in verse 21 that they went to Capernaum. And when Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. Whew, baby, would I have loved to have been there. To hear Jesus preach. It even makes it hard because Mark tells us what I missed, what we all missed. The people were amazed at his teaching because he taught them as one who had authority, not as the teachers of the law. Ugh. And then you got the strangest thing happening here. I mean, it's really kind of bizarre. Just then, we read in verse 23. Well, Vicki, read it for us. What happened? What's that strange thing that happened?
There was a man in the synagogue who was possessed by an impure spirit, and he cried out, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God."
Oof. Nathan, have you ever had anyone in your church stand up and interrupt you in the middle of a sermon?
Yeah, on occasion. Very rarely, though.
And was it? Did it help the service? Did it help your message? Or did it hurt?
It was very disruptive. It takes a long time to get back. Sometimes, in one case, I had to rebuke a guy because he was trying to insert himself into the message, and you're being inappropriate. You need to stop.
Yeah. No, I've had that on one occasion only in all those years I've been pastoring. In my occasion, the guy was high on cocaine, it turned out.
Oh.
And
Oh, wow.
and so when this poor little elderly usher went up to try and remove him, shaking with fear, it was a good thing that guy ran out of the sanctuary because that usher certainly wasn't going to muscle him out of there. No, it's always negative. Anytime I've ever heard of this, when a heckler stands up, it doesn't help, it hurts. But Vicki, what does this guy say? What does this demon-possessed man say?
Well, they're demons. It's probably not one person speaking. It says, "What do you want with us, Jesus? Have you come to destroy us?" And then one guy, or the demon talking, says, "I know who you are, the Holy One of God."
So, doesn't that seem to be a positive message? I mean, here you've got Satan. Satan's emissaries, I got it. Not Satan in person, but the ones, his demons. They're saying, I know who you are.
Yeah, but it's not positive. I would think demons talking to the Lord, I mean, of course, if it's demon addressing the Lord, they're not going to be positive. I would also think they would be afraid. And, they said, "Have you come to destroy us?"
Right. So they're confessing publicly. Jesus is preaching, and they're saying, yes, we're demons. We know you are far more powerful than us. You are powerful, more powerful than us. And secondly, you are the Holy One of God. I mean, that sounds like good news. I mean, maybe Satan gave up. Maybe Satan has decided can't beat him, join him. I think he may be doing a marketing campaign for Jesus to help validate his ministry. Do you think?
I would think that would be terrifying for the people listening. And and for some reason, Jesus either doesn't want them. I would think because it's so disruptive and because it's so terrifying, because as a speaker, you don't want to be interrupted by anyone or anything,
Right.
much less a bunch of demons. I mean, forget a guy on cocaine, but I mean, a bunch of demons, he shuts them down.
Well,
Yeah.
and like last week's episode, like, who do you want giving your introduction when you're speaking, right? Like, hey, Satan's going to give your introduction this week, Nathan. Oh, fantastic. I want his
Good
stamp
point.
of approval. People will think really highly of me if
point.
Satan is the one introducing me.
But look what happens. Look, in verse 28, news about Jesus spread quickly over the whole region of Galilee. So what happens? They stand up and do this, and you think it'd be negative. Are you kidding me? This is phenomenal publicity. People are coming from all over. It's expanding his ministry. I mean, is Satan working Jesus' side of the street? Is he trying to help him out?
He's not trying to.
Yeah,
He's doing something.
He's doing something there. It's kind of, but wouldn't you agree, Vicki, that it's kind of odd? If you're going to heckle.
Yeah, but again, you know, Christ even says for us, he'll work everything together for good. It's not like he's like hitting his head with his palm and going, or his palm of his head, whatever.
No. All I'm saying is that Satan's strategy seems very odd. It seems counterintuitive. In fact, we read in the latter part of verse 33 that Jesus, continued to drive out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. Again, that just seems odd. I mean, why wouldn't Jesus wanted to know who he was? This is no secret. I know that scholars will say, oh, this is a messianic secret. He didn't want Satan to introduce him too soon. But that's obviously not true. How do we know that in the text?
Because God the Father just introduced him. This is my beloved son. Oh, shh.
So,
come on, Dad, not now.
So this is a secret. They can't keep it, right?
Right.
They've already announced this in advance. I mean, people know that. Jesus wants them to know that. And so Jesus wouldn't let the demons speak because they knew who he was? No, I think you'd want some free advertising. I mean, it just seems odd. It just seems weird, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I agree with you, Vicki. There is absolutely no way Satan is going to flip and become a spokesperson and an advocate for Jesus. I mean, I know that's not true.
Yeah.
But it seems odd. Why would he do that? Why would he be interrupting Jesus and telling people who he was? Well, let me just show you something in the text. Because we read that up in verse 25, when he said, "Be quiet, come out of him," the evil spirit shook the man violently and came out with a shriek. Well, that's fascinating. Jesus said, "Be quiet, shut up and come out of him." The evil spirit shook the man violently. Jesus didn't, right?
Right.
The evil spirit did. So the evil spirit is putting on a show and came out with a shriek. Jesus didn't ask for that, but it looks really impressive. Okay? So Satan is making a bigger spectacle out of this than Jesus was. And as a result of that, the people, we read in verse 27, were all so amazed that they asked each other, "Who is this? Or what is this? A new teaching and with authority. He even gives orders to evil spirits and they obey him." Notice the emphasis on the way the evil spirit came out. News about him spread quickly over the whole region of Galilee. So Satan, as a result of what he did, Jesus' popularity explodes, right? But in verse 29, we read that when he healed Simon's mother-in-law, that another miracle, That evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus, verse 32, all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons. So, what's happened to Jesus' ministry? How did it begin? In verse 21.
He started preaching in the synagogue.
And Satan interrupts, does his work, and how does it end in the latter part of verse 32 and following?
He was driving out demons.
Right.
Yeah, demons and healing. Did you see what just happened? Jesus switched from a preaching ministry, giving more and more time and attention to healing ministry, to casting out demons. Look what he did. Now, take note of this. It's fascinating. We read in verse 35, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up and went to a solitary place where he prayed. Doesn't often tell us that he did that. But at the end of that, we read, Simon and his companions went to look for him. And they said, everyone is looking for you. Why was everyone looking for Jesus?
Probably because they wanted healing.
Right. They want free health care, right?
Yeah.
They want free health care. They want their problems looked after. They want Jesus to do miracles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus replied, what? What does he say?
Let's go somewhere else.
To the nearby villages. He says, no, I'm not going to heal him. Why? Let us go elsewhere to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. What has God asked Jesus to do primarily? To preach. And what did Satan want him to do?
Heal.
To miracle, to heal.
Yep.
Is it wrong to heal?
No, of course not.
No. Will he do it in the future?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So it's not wrong to do that. But what is Satan doing here? What is this subtle strategy of Satan? If he can't get him to sin, what does he want to do? He wants to deflect him away from his primary ministry, where he can make his maximum impact for the kingdom and do something that is good, but not the best he could do. Does that make sense, Vicki?
Yes, it does, because faith comes from hearing and hearing from the word. So they're not able to hear the word because he's busy doing something that's good, but it's not as good as telling people about
the good news.
Sins in the Lord, his ministry. Yeah.
Right.
He was sent to preach. That's what he's saying. I know the primary thing God's called me to do. And Satan is trying to deflect him away from that. And that's why it says...
And he's doing it, yeah.
And he's doing it.
Uh-huh.
And that's why we read in verse 39, so Jesus traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. Preaching first. Not that he won't help, not that he won't do other things, but he makes the main thing the main thing. That's how we make our maximum impact for God. When we know what God has called us to do for him and for his kingdom, we need the discipline to make sure that we keep the main thing the main thing. And the hardest time for me to do that is when people are asking for help. Don't you find that with your schedules, you guys?
Always.
A flood of things. Actually, I have an appointment this afternoon. That's busy work.
I have found in pastoral ministry, and Vic, I'm sure you've found it outside of pastoral ministry, there's no end of people who would love our time and help. And we can spend all our time and help doing that and don't concentrate on what the main thing we can do is. I learned this, unfortunately, or fortunately, from my wife. For years, we'd go through the week, and on Saturday when my wife was home and our kids would be there, she'd say, oh, good, we can spend the day together on Saturday. I'd say, well, I'm not quite ready for Sunday. I need to go into the office. Why didn't you use your time better? Oh, well, all these people came. They needed marriage counseling. I had to go to a denominational function. I had all these things to do. You should have said no to them in order to do the main thing, because you won't be as effective in your preaching because you haven't had the time to spend. You need to say no. And I said, no, I must do whatever someone asks me to do if I have the ability to help them. And then I read this passage. And Jesus had the courage to say no to legitimate ministry if it would take him away from the main thing God wanted him to accomplish in life. The secret of success is to say no. The strategy of Satan is to so diversify us, to keep us so busy doing good things that we're not doing the most important thing. Look, this is a subtle strategy, but I'm telling you, Jesus needed a time of prayer to make sure that he had his priorities straight. If he needed that, we need that. I would challenge all of us to make sure we do the best thing, not just the next thing. Because Satan can't get you to fail out of ministry with sin. He will try to limit your effectiveness by having you run in every direction except the direction he wanted you to go.
Satan is our enemy. He wants to destroy you. How? First, he'll try to get you to sin. But if he can't get you to disobey God, then he'll try to keep you so busy doing good things, you don't have time to focus on God's primary purpose for your ministry. Be aware. I trust that today's discussion of God's Word has been helpful and served as an encouragement to not just be hearers of the Word, but doers. Together, let's bring God's Word to life, to our lives this week. The CrossTalk podcast is a production of CrossTalk Global, equipping biblical communicators so every culture hears God's voice. To find out more, or to support the work of this ministry, please visit www.crosstalkglobal.org. You can also support this show by sharing it on social media and telling your friends. Tune in next Friday as we continue our discussion through the Gospel of Mark. Be sure to join us.